Cinema Worms.
Discussing everything from Grima Wormtongue to the Shy Halud.
Hey, Cinema Worms is back for another video episode. Finally, I'm Zabib.
And I'm Lindz.
Yay! So we're going to be talking about a film that Lindz was very excited for. You can explain the context of your love for The Long Walk.
Yes. Just get right into it.
Yeah.
You know my long pre-existing love for films and books about survival horror reality dystopia. It's to this one for literally years. It was originally a 1979 novel by Stephen King under his pseudonym Richard Bachman. The film was directed by Francis Lawrence, who directed 2005's Constantine,
Which I loved.
I have never seen Constantine.
I had an obsession with it.
We actually should watch that. He also directed not only the Hunger Games trilogy, but he's been directing like Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes as well. So he is well versed in
irony.
Dystopian teen survival horror.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
And the screenplay for The Long Walk was done by J.T. Molnar, who also wrote, amongst other things, 2023's Strange Darling, which we haven't seen yet either, but which I really want to. Now, I could talk about this cast all day, and we will talk about them a little bit, but let's just get into the plot first. We will have some spoilers towards the end of this, but we will flag that up. Right now we're just going to be giving spoiler-free plot and we'll talk about casting and stuff, but then we will get into some. So anybody who's watching this, if you don't want to be spoilered, there will be a point at which we will flag it and you can stop watching this. So The Long Walk is an annual event which takes place in an alternate 20th century America. It's populated solely by boys and young men. In the book, it's 100 boys. In the film, it's 50, which you can understand because they obviously wanted to trim that down, given the considerations of time, money, and pun kind of intended, pacing. It is, the boys are required to walk endlessly at 3 miles an hour. In the book, it's actually 4, but this is just not feasible. King did some research, but I think largely a lot of this was cocaine-fueled. So maybe a cocaine-fueled Stephen King
allegedly
wanted to walk at 4 miles an hour, but anyway. So, there's no finish line as such. You're on this walk, you walk until there's only one of you left. Now, if you fall below speed at any point, you get a warning. If you fail to make speed within the next 10 seconds, you get a second warning. If you fall below speed again, you get a third warning, and then you get executed by the soldiers who are like rolling around on the tanks beside the road. They call this kind of colloquially getting your ticket. I assumed it was like getting your ticket to the farm upstate, but this might be an Americanism that I'm not super familiar with. Any trip, stumble, or mistake after your third warning is like curtains for you. It is lights out. You can walk off your warnings, but it takes you an hour for each one, and it's slightly unfair because it doesn't quite work. Like, you can't just, if you get 3 warnings and you walk 1 hour, that doesn't actually remove all of them. You have to walk 3 hours to remove all 3 that you have, without ever slowing once. So what is the point of The Long Walk, I hear you say, apart from the fact that we love to watch dystopian horror? It is supposed to inspire awe and patriotism in the people watching. So The Long Walk is actually being filmed and broadcast to the entire country, so you better hold your head up high, boys, says the Major, who delivers most of the yelling in this film, played with deep enthusiasm by Mark Hamill. So here's the microphone that we forgot to plug in for the first part.
Yes, magically apparated into the scene. Now, please continue describing this fascinating film.
Okay, so, well, let's get into the cast, because I think, and I've said this a couple of times, I actually saw this film without you when you were away, and then you've come back and we went to watch it again together last night. I think this is going to be one of those films that we look back at in 5 to 10 years and go, my god, everyone who's kind of famous now was in this film. So there are so many kids who are like coming up and they're just all incredible. It is a stacked cast. So let's get into it. Cooper Hoffman, who's maybe best known for his role as the protagonist in 2021's Licorice Pizza, as well as being Philip Seymour Hoffman's son, plays Ray Garrity, who's kind of our protagonist here. He's a kid from Maine, which happens to be the state that the Long Walkers are walking in this year. And he signs up as a result of something in his past that we find out during the film. And his mother, played just beautifully by Judy Greer, is a tremulous bag of nerves that doesn't want Ray to go, she didn't want him to sign up, and she certainly doesn't want him to walk to his potential death. Accompanying him on the lonely road here is Peter McVries, played beautifully again by David Johnson. He was in 2023's Rylane, as well as the last Alien film, Alien Romulus. And he's pretty well known in the UK because he's been on various stage and screen adaptations, including, quite amusingly, an Agatha Christie adaptation. He was in a stage production with David Tennant. He's done quite a lot of stuff. Now, I could spend literally an hour talking about all of the other performances because a lot of these kids get a decent amount of screen time. It's not just all about Garrity. But we have other kids on the road that are worthy of spending time with here. So Hank Olsen, who's played by Ben Wang of recent Karate Kid fame. We have Tut Nyot, who plays Art Baker. Charlie Plummer plays Gary Barkovich. If there is a nemesis that is not the road here, it is probably Barkovich. We have Joshua Ojic, who plays Collie Parker, hilariously described in the novel as, quote, a mean son of a bitch. And at the same time, I was like, I know you're supposed to be, and you are doing this kind of mean meathead thing, but I feel like there's a sensitive soul there behind all that. And Garrett Waring plays Stebbins, a kid who kind of lurks in the background with some secrets of its own. So that's going to sound like a lot of names, but you do get to know them pretty well as you go on. They spend most of their time walking and talking and kind of bantering with each other or arguing, depending on what is happening and what's kind of playing out. You might have clocked.
That's it!
Yeah, you just seen my notes.
Sorry.
You might have
clocked.
I was
like, why? That's why I know him.
Roman Griffin Davies, who's the kid from 2019's Jojo Rabbit, is shall we say briefly in this. He we will not give a spoiler, but he is one of the walkers. One of the things that I like most about The Long Walk is that it feels like a metaphor for war. And actually, interestingly, the creator of Battle Royale, which we think of as being the quintessential earliest version of this, the creator actually was inspired, he read and was inspired by The Long Walk. And it's kind of funny,
the original.
We've come full circle. So we've gone from The Long Walk to Battle Royale, the novel, to Battle Royale, the manga, to Hunger Games, and then, of course, the director of those films is now dead, The Long Walk. And I just think it's really interesting. Apparently Suzanne Collins was encouraged greatly by Stephen King when she first wrote Hunger Games as well. So we've come full circle in this whole thing, but it does feel like a big metaphor for war, for young men's lives being kind of disposable, to sign up to earn your machismo, despite the fact that your chances of living through it are really, really slim. So can we talk about that a little bit before we get into any spoilers?
And I'd throw in Squid Game.
Of course, Squid Game as well. The thing, I don't necessarily any problems, although it's very clear that the socioeconomic conditions of this alternate America are not good. It is clear that everybody is pretty poor, and they've signed up as a way to get out. So actually, yeah, you're right. Like there's some parallels. We like most about watching, about watching people strive and suffer and be put in bad positions. Also think about The Hunt, that film as well, and
yeah, that's a great film. I recommend that. Mm-hmm. Really, why are we drawn to stories of people at the mercy of some sort of evil game, sort of twisted tradition where they're getting killed off one by one?
Yeah.
And you think, oh my God, that's horrific. These 50 boys in the film are walking until they just slowly get killed off and one is supposed to survive.
Yes.
And this is a national tradition in this dystopian America. Why would you watch that?
And
why is that a compelling story? Well, we keep coming back to that kind of story over and over. And there's something about it that unravels or unveils some horrific truth, right? When it's told like this, it's the horror of that disposability and that groupthink is really obvious in the story, but in our everyday lives, in war, in the way we find people disposable in society, it's just accepted.
the whole time I was watching it, for both times, I was thinking about the Ken Burns Vietnam documentary that we've watched together. It's a very, very long but very worthwhile one, and it kind of made me think, like, this is just, these kids are just cannon fodder. You know, there's so many of them. They know that only one of them's going to survive, which is, I guess, not exactly what you would expect in war, but the only way that any of them will live is by outwalking the others, even the ones that they've become friends with. How it is voluntary to sign up for the long walk, but they do not know anybody who didn't, because it is kind of shameful. You know, it's shameful not to believe in the long walk, it's shameful not to sign up for one. It's all kind of geared to, you know, be a man, show up for your country, be patriotic. It's sweet and right to die for one's country, you know.
So tell me how you liked the film in terms of how it was played out. Well, obviously, maybe a lot of people haven't read the book, but just because this is a story that's been important to you your entire life.
Yes, and it has influenced me. It's one of the handful of books that have really, really influenced me as a person and as a writer. One of the reasons I didn't reread the book prior to seeing the film is because I wanted to go in as sort of as fresh as I could. And then immediately after I came home, I started listening to the audiobook to compare the two. They've kind of, they've changed some things, and they've kind of merged some characters together, and they've cut some. It does feel like a pretty faithful adaptation, emotionally as well. Garrity is a wonderful protagonist. He vacillates between being terribly afraid and terribly calm, because you would. He's going through these periods where he's like, I'm completely calm, and you're like, no buddy, you're in shock, you know. But you kind of get to see this at some point. He's just like very kind of, he's numb to everything that's happening. You know, the first few are a real shock, it's horrible, and then after that it's just well, that's just what happens, you know. And it does make me think about war. Like, the first few times you see someone die, you're going to be really shocked. The more it happens, the more you become numb to it. What did you think? Is your first experience of the long walk?
Yeah, it feels like a really compelling, dark, fable almost. And okay, if you think about things like the Hunger Games, where it's like you have all these children killing each other, but it's also YA popular sort of some storytelling, of and it has that style of things based off of Stephen King stories, and just in terms of like the dialogue, there's like a sort of directness to it, and there's a quality to the dialogue that I can't quite nail down.
It's very King, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very King. Yeah. It's very King, where it feels almost like play-like at times, and
the riposts are very like, oh, this and that, and like
banter.
Yeah, the banter is very carefully stylized as teenage boys, but it's stylized teenage boys. So,
and it works. It feels like they're talking through their lives. Yeah. And these characters are all very compelling, full-hearted also. There's something very full-hearted and something we empathize with, and just tender at the heart of Stephen King's characters. Yeah. And these young actors are so impressive. Cooper Hoffman really was a standout. I understand he is like a Nepo baby, but he really inherited...
I'll allow it. He's inherited... Yeah, he
I'm
really
sorry.
has. He's
inherited some of his dad's skill. Like, he's a very compelling screen presence. He just is. There's just something about him that brings so much like pathos and vulnerability to this role. And all of the other actors also bring a lot of specificity, like to balance this number of characters and to have a film. First of all, they're just walking, right? But it makes it riveting and compelling. And they're just walking and talking. That's the whole film, but it's really exciting.
It is really exciting.
And dark and twisted.
So, funnily enough, the two kind of main black characters, that's Tut, who's playing Baker, and David Johnson, who's playing Peter McVries. They're both British, and they're doing really American accents. So
of course they're British.
I feel like Tutneo actually does a better one than David Johnson, which verges on a bit odd at times. But he is and David Johnson, what a standout performance from him. At times, for me, he overshadowed Cooper Hoffman, which is like they were like neck and neck. they were playing off each other. Yeah. They're really like, it was really tight. The way that he's delivering the lines, the way they're kind of bouncing off each other. You see McVrees being kind of more private, kind of more guarded. Garrity being he's kind of naive. He's kind of gullible, and nothing's turning out the way he thought or he imagined. He sort of thought it would be like kind of glory filled and honorable, and actually everything's just shit and death and terror, and it's just not what he thought at all. And through all that, you're still you're trying to figure out, each individual boy is trying to figure out, well, do I keep my humanity? Am I helping other kids? Am I feeling sorry for them when they die, or am I isolating myself completely? And that's a problem, because once you start isolating yourself, Barkovich, who's a wonderful performance by Charlie Plummer there as well, because Barkovich is just a dick, and at the same time there is a horrible loneliness to Barkovich that you can see why he's doing.
Yeah, a lot of young men with hurt and isolation and nobility and feelings, and it's great to see a story of a lot of young men interacting with each other and striving for something under great odds. It's just like a compelling kind of story that we don't typically see. It's really about friendship a lot of the time. Yeah. So, spoiler discussion.
Oh, so stop now. If you don't want any spoilers, you haven't seen The Long Walk, and you don't want to be spoiled for anything, do pause now and then come back to us later. And for everyone who has seen it or doesn't care about spoilers, go nuts now.
Yeah, so, okay.
There's definitely a couple of things I want to talk about here.
Okay, so for people who've seen it, I'd love to know your thoughts on just, like, how it impacted you, and particularly, like, how you're getting down to the final few boys that are alive, the tensions and interplay there, how they get picked off, and particularly the ending between... Okay, I'm sorry, I need to keep track of their names, even though, like, you probably have it right here. Garrity and
McVrees and Stebbins, who's kind of like the...
Okay, so Garrity, played by Cooper Hoffman, and McVrees, played by, is David Johnson.
Yeah. And then Garrett Waring is Billy Stebbins.
So, okay, they reach the end, and... they're these two best friends. They're both so noble. Like, what's going to happen? They both clearly would sacrifice for the other. And that's basically what they try to do. Initially, McReese tries to sacrifice himself for Garrity. And then Garrity gets him up and then does a switcheroo and sacrifices himself. And Garrity had been hoping to get revenge on the Major. We didn't talk about the Major.
Yeah.
Played by
Luke
Skywalker.
About? Yeah, you want to look played by Luke Skywalker.
The Major, who is a source of focus for Garrity, and he seems to be on this walk reluctantly, but feeling he has to for some reason. Then he hates the Major, and you realize his father was executed by the Major for basically thought crimes, for dissent against the regime. And his father refused to bow down to this, like, twisted American patriotism, and he'd been reading, like, philosophers and things that he shouldn't have. So they came to the house and were like, okay, you can basically submit your loyalty. And he was like, no, and got shot by the Major. And the Major, who was like this figure.
And he's like, remember to his son. He's like, this was a kind of, hey, you don't have to bend the knee. I'm not going to, and you don't have to either. Yeah. It's a huge part of Garrity's thing.
So Garrity was wanting to get revenge, and at some point, McReese talked him out of this. Like, why would you then kill and lower yourself to their level? Yeah. Why are you taking yourself away from your family, potentially, like, making yourself someone you're not? So it convinces him not to. But then at the end, when Garrity sacrifices himself for his best friend now, McReese, who has...
McVrees.
Huh?
McReese. No, McVrees with a V.
What?
McVrees.
What are you saying? McVrees. You
don't even know the... Look, you watched the whole film.
And I didn't remember a single name after.
Peter McVrees.
Okay. Yeah. McVrees, who had this long talk at one point in the film with Garrity about... They talk a lot about the meaning of life and appreciating goodness and holding on to your goodness and the, like, joy in the world and having hope. And he preaches all this and, like, why you shouldn't necessarily, like, become a murderer. Yeah. That diminishes you. Yeah. And he ends up basically in Garrity's memory, and I interpret this as him taking a step in Garrity's memory and also doing what he didn't want to do but what feels necessary, and he kills the Major. Basically, once you win, you get riches and one wish. So he wishes for a gun. They don't think he's gonna like go kill the Major, who's like one of the
reason that they don't think the reason that they don't think that he is gonna kill the Major is because McVrees has spent the entire walk talking about how while life can be terrible, we are living for moments. We are living for moments of beauty, and everything is beautiful. And so the Major is pretty convinced that McVrees is not going to do anything because he is a pacifist.
Basically, summary, pacifist.
And he's sensitive and he's more practical. Garrity is very emotional and very kind of instinctive. He does things without thinking them through. He's reacting. He has had some stuff in his own backstory that kind of makes him act the way he acts now, where he's trying to be better. He's trying to be like the kind of man that he wants to be. And Garrity learns quite a lot from him. Now, there has been a critique of this. I would love for you to talk about that a little bit.
Lindz just saw some people on the internet being annoying, as they will be. Those Redditors and blue skyers.
Can you imagine people on the internet it's never happened before, and it's usually, so we don't know how to deal with it.
It's usually, so I don't think it's a serious critique, but aside, because you see a lot of characters of color in this film, which is great, and a lot of like darker skinned black young men. It's amazing,
but you don't see a lot as well.
Yeah, you don't. And the top two characters, Cooper Hoffman, white, and David Johnson, black. So they're playing these two main characters, basically best friends. Yeah. Cooper Hoffman's Garrity is more vulnerable, is given more of the backstory, while you have McVrees is kind of this like noble character who is always sort of wanting to go towards peace and rising above. And he does describe a backstory where he went through a lot of hardship, but he's always helping out Garrity. He's kind of always being nice to people and trying to do the right
thing.
thing.
Apart from Barkovich.
Except because when he shits on Barkovich.
He has a very clear moral stance. He's quite inflexible about it, which is not necessarily a good thing. But that's something that I find really interesting. Whereas Garrity's a bit like, I think Barkovich regrets this, and he sort of feels sorry for him.
So McVrees is, and also just the way the actor David Johnson plays him is without a lot of cracks and with kind of a lot of just like unflappable, like I'm okay energy, while Cooper Hoffman plays Garrity with a lot, and also is written with a lot of vulnerability. So at the end, Garrity does sacrifice himself for McVrees. Okay, so you said some people on the internet were labeling McVrees, who is a black character in the film, as like a magical Negro stereotype.
Yeah.
And obviously it's white people saying this, and probably who don't have like the context of, well, you have these characters basically as they are in the book, and then they're probably cast whoever's good in the role. Some people black people might be cast in roles that weren't necessarily written as black, just as, so that kind of makes less sense because you have the character just being translated to the screen, not necessarily like, oh, a black actor is playing him, we have to make this different. And I would argue that that's actually a weirdly offensive reading of McVrees as a character. If you have a black character who is presenting as like really like noble and who's like a figure that many of the characters are like looking up to, who maybe could have more flaws. I think the argument they're making is about the character himself and maybe how the character is performed, not labeling it as, oh, because he's black, therefore it's a magical Negro stereotype. So when people are constantly going to, oh, this issue is, well, this character playing this role, it's racist for this or this reason, I think they're really diminishing the specificity of these characters and the story. It's not actually due to him being black. There's nothing that kind of labels him as a magical Negro character. You could argue that he needed more vulnerability. And that's just a character who maybe is a little too perfect. You could argue that. He is, in a way, like kind of too perfect and unflappable. But that's not a magical Negro stereotype. And so stop just like labeling characters as magical Negroes.
Yeah. So I completely agree. And the problem that I have with that is it doesn't work as a critique because, as you say, I know you haven't read it, but we have talked about it. Like, the book McFreeze is very much like Screen McFreeze. They have changed his backstory because the backstory in the book, it would not have played well. Let me say that. It's like, the problem with this critique is, if McFreeze is written the way that he's written on screen, and you simply had a white actor portray him, would you be seeing it in the same way? Would you be saying like, oh, but he's too perfect, he's too this, he's that? Because I would argue he's not. He's subtly less than, you see him as more perfect because the others have flaws that are more on display. I think McFreeze is somebody who is, the way that David Johnson played him, he's very private, he's very guarded. He does let his guard down with Garrity several times, but he never gives himself away fully. He's never fully open. He is kind of this guy who is like, he's doing what he's doing, but he doesn't necessarily want to open up about everything. And that's completely understandable given the backstory they gave him on screen. And also there's, so Cooper Hoffman and David Johnson have talked about in interviews how there is kind of a homoerotic undercurrent in the book. They played that up for the screen as well. So again, you kind of get the sense that McFreeze is maybe queer and there's something going on, and maybe that's the thing that happens in his backstory is getting his ass kicked. He says he picked a fight with the wrong guy, but you don't know the circumstances, and because of the way he's playing everything else, do you have a girl McFreeze? Big pause. No, I don't. You know, it's very like, did you get your ass kicked for some other reason? You can see why he might be reluctant to be open. And the reasons why he saves Garrity, he has become friends with Garrity. He does save him a couple of times. But even the thing with his mum, he's like, I just didn't want your mum to see your brains all over the road and her shoes. Like, goddamn, dude, don't do that to her. There's a morality and an inflexibility that you see applied in a good way. But then he's a shit to Barkovich. Even when, okay, Barkovich deserves it, but there's times when, towards the end, he could have been nicer to Barkovich, and he could have, like, helped somebody who was hurting and who was clearly at the end of his rope, and he kind of chooses not to. And I don't think McFreeze is perfect at all. I think he's hella guarded. And I think it's a misreading of it to say he's perfect. He's not perfect at all, you know.
Would love to know people's thoughts. If you've seen this film, we highly recommend it.
Yeah.
It's an intense drama. It's a dystopic nightmare. And it's very compelling, particularly in our moment in history, too. Reading it through the lens of current events.
Oof, Lord.
And young men in this day and age. So, Lindz's favorite book, basically, from the formative time, has been made into a great film. So it's really exciting for you. Thank you for being here. Bye.